Good afternoon, my name is Tumi Tladi. Welcome to my YouTube channel. If this video is the first video of mine that you are currently watching, I'm gonna urge you to watch my other previous videos as we continue with this mini series on Web API. So in our previous video, we did cover AutoMapper, so we should mark this as done. That's session number 1. Now session number 2, we're gonna be looking at the validators, particularly this package, NuGet package called Fluent Validation. So let's jump in right through it. Okay, this video I promise is not going to be long. So let's start with .NET Framework and then we'll end with .NET Core. So Fluent Validation, you install the package. Please figure out which package you need to install. Now when it comes to this, there's a folder called Validators and then there's a folder called Validations. I don't know why I named it Validations on .NET Core. I don't like it, but it's fine. It's supposed to be Validators. Okay, so just know that it needs its own class, and we're still going to use example of feedbacks. So how do you register this? I'm glad you asked. You go to app_start folder, Web API config. This is how you register Fluent Validation. This is how you do it. Okay, let's give this guy a second to a minute or so. There we go. So on line number 19, this is how you register Fluent Validation. Fluent Validation model validator provider .config. You pass it in that HTTP configuration. So this is how you register it. Good. How do you register this in .NET Core? Let's see. Do you register it? In fact, you do. Yes, you do. Let's go to installers. And then let's go to MVC installer. Yes, you do. And then this is where you register it on line number 18, where you're gonna say, listen, services, add controllers. You're gonna give it the options, but when you're done, you're gonna say add Fluent Validation. It has its own options where you register validators from the entire assembly containing what? Startup. We'll talk about this folder called installers at the later stage. There's a video scheduled for that one. Because I promise you the content on this YouTube channel, it's good. So we'll talk about installs later on. So now we know how Fluent Validation as a package gets to be registered on both frameworks. Okay, how do you utilize it? So let's go to validators. Because Web API is a version system, I have a v1, v2, v3. Validations, I have a v1, v2 because I still yet to implement v3 system from Monday next week. So we're gonna go with v1 because it's a robust version. General, we're gonna go to post one feedback. Now this is a request coming from what? The mobile application, which is Xamarin. And by the way, I intend to do extensive series after this. This is a preparation for Xamarin, so pay attention to everything I do. Before we open this class, it depends on the request, which is the contract. I did explain the contract in our previous video. Please watch this video where I looked at the contract in the Web API. So we need to open the contract first for specifically the request. General, as you can see, post one feedback, it's a request, version 1. This is the first thing that we need to do. Okay, so this guy. Okay, now do you notice something here? There's an attribute. I promise to talk about this attribute. This we covered in our previous video. It's a standard, it's like a view model, but in Web API we don't call them view model, we call them request and responses. So this is how the request is. It's being expected from the mobile application, which is Xamarin. The title, the message, the rating, and then who's writing the feedback. And then we are validating this object because it's a request using the validator attribute. You see it comes from Fluent Validation.attributes. Type of, you see now, post one feedback request validator, and this is the naming convention. This is the best practice. So this is when I get to open this class, post one feedback request validator for v1. So this is how Fluent Validation works. Okay, so the first thing we need, this is the best practice that you do this. This is the best practice. Okay, and then what we do is that it inherits from abstract validator that takes in, you see that more request class, which is post one feedback request. Yes, base class for object validators. Okay, cool, where it takes in the type, which is this guy. Now the only thing that we need after that inheritance is that we need a constructor, and then we need to now to provide the rule for methods. So what is a rule for? Now a rule for comes from iRuleBuilder initial, okay, and then rule for it defines a validation rule for a specific property. So a rule for this property, okay. So in this case, a rule for title. What should the title look like? So we are saying the title should have a length minimum, as you can see, minimum and maximum of 10 to 20 characters. There's a reason why I do that. It's been tested, right, with the message. Now this message, I write a custom message. So what I'm gonna do, I'm just gonna open this class called global variables, where you will see all my because I like to group all my messages in one place, like global variables. So let's close this guy. Let's go 9, open, help us, web API, global variables. So there's a class, you should know that, because I want to be coming back to this class. It's called global variables, but in this case, it's doing the validation messages for different pages, uploads, now feedbacks, phone numbers, access pins, and the voice messages. For now, we're looking at these three: for title, for rating, for messages, where I'm saying the title length should be 10 to 20 characters, the rating length should be 1 to 5 characters, the message length should be 5 to 100 characters. So this is what we have here. Okay, so for the rating, we're saying greater than 0, less than 6. So it should be more than 5. It should be less than 6, well, 1 to 5. And then obviously it has its own error message. And then message or property, the length should be from 5 to 100 characters with the message. You need to be very careful about what you put in here as arguments. You need to be very careful, because whatever you write here, it should be exactly a reflection of what you have in your arguments. You need to be a very disciplined developer, not a lazy one. Okay, so now we understand how it gets to be wired up, right? Okay, now let me show you how this is wired up in .NET Core. So let me close all of this. So let's go now to say v1. Okay, this one doesn't need a request, does it? Yes, it does. So let's go to contracts, v1 request, general, post one feedback request for version 1, right? But notice that this guy, it doesn't have that funny attribute called the validator. It doesn't have it. It doesn't need to know about it like that. And then now we're gonna go to the validations, post one feedback requires a validator, and then that's what we have. The same thing, 10 to 20 characters, 10 to 20 minimum and maximum length. It should not be greater than 0 or less than 6. And then the length should be from 5 to 100 characters, you know, and then the same thing. Now this class obviously exists in this project. Let me close this guy. It exists, utilities, helpers, global variables. Again, it's the same thing that we have in .NET Framework with our error messages that will be displayed when we test this using Postman or Swagger. So this is the only thing that you need to know. But the last thing, that how does it work? Because we just have this class. How does it work? By the way, where is the reference? I'm curious. Let's see. This is what I love about the Visual Studio, because you get to see where it's being utilized. Let's look at the references. I'm curious. Post one feedback request validator, where it's being utilized. So Visual Studio, wake up, give me some information. Give me some information. Okay, let's wait for this guy. There we go. The constructor itself, I should have known. It's fine, but how do you make use of this? I'm glad that you asked. Now let's start with .NET Framework. How do you utilize this? So this is what happens when you get to your controller. When the request arrives to this endpoint v1 general feedbacks, as we've been using this as an example, So this is the controller that has multiple endpoints, 2 endpoints, get all feedbacks and post one. We're going to focus on this one. So do you see that request? This is the request that comes in, right? Now the first thing that you do is that you need to have this check. If not, the model state is valid. That means if there are some issues, return bad request. When you do so and pass in the model state, it will automatically knows which properties to be triggered in order to show the error message with the help of Fluent Validation. This is how it gets to be known. Okay, we're gonna come back to this when we do a video on validation filters. We're gonna come back to this. Stay tuned for that. Okay, so this is how it gets to be done. Now I want to go finally now to .NET Core again and look at how do you utilize this. Controllers, V1, general, feedbacks, V1 controller. Now this one is different, okay, because there's no check. Okay, let me close this. This is not what we want. It's gonna confuse. Now post one feedback. This is what the request, this way it's coming in, right? There isn't that condition that check if. There isn't. If not model, there isn't. Even if I go to this service, you know, where we post, there isn't. So let's close this guy and go to services, V1, general, feedbacks. We have the interface for when we post one feedback, right? And then we have the implementation for it. So I want to focus on the implementation. So the implementation, let me do this, close everything, and then so we can see this one. I just want to show there's no if. There isn't. But this guy works. It works. And then the reason why it works, this is where now this video comes in. This video of validation filter, the easy validation filter, and I marked it to be for .NET Core. The focus should be on .NET Core only. And this is where we're going to come back now and talk about how does Fluent Validation with those custom error messages get to be mapped on a specific request that comes in without this flag, this condition, if not model state is valid. Because we'll talk about it. I'll come back and reference this. But for now, just know that this is AutoMapper in a nutshell. I hope you liked this video. I hope you found it to be informative, juicy, because it is a juicy stuff. And yeah, I was quick, you know, I was straight to the point, and then that's what I want to do. Keep these videos short, straight to the point. With that being said, I would appreciate you if you leave a comment if you have any. Like the video, subscribe. The most important thing, subscribe, and then click on the notification bell to be notified for the next video that gets to be dropped on YouTube. Thank you very much. See you next.